stories. I was 20 years old. I am female. I had just left the Jehovah's Witnesses church after being raised in the religion, which I use for a lack of better term, more like a cult. I grew up not being able to be around non-witnesses, or what they called worldly people. I had no friends and felt like an alien reassimilating into a foreign culture. I met Nate while in a motorcycle safety class. I wanted to be a badass and do something scary I could never do before. He was a nice guy, my age. He asked me out. It was my first date. I was nervous. We went to dinner, and he asked me to come back to his place with him. I didn't want to be rude and was super naive. I was surprised that he had his own home already. It was 2-story, in a nice neighborhood. We sat and talked, and then he offered to show me around. Again, being a super naive, I said okay. He had 4 rooms upstairs, 1 door was closed. I asked what was in there. He was hesitant, but opened the door to an all-pink, frilly girl room. It looked dusty. We walked in, and I touched the bedspread. He started to scream and grabbed my arm. He said I would change the germs on the bedspread. No one was allowed to touch anything in that room. It was only for Lindsay, and it should never, ever be disturbed. Okay, what the fuck ever. We left the room quickly, and he crumbled to the ground in the hall, crying. I said that I was very sorry. He then told me that she was his girlfriend, and would be back someday. They both decided, quote unquote, to see other people, but he knew she would return to him. I started to panic. The guy got more and more incoherent. I heard the front door open downstairs and footsteps on the stairs. I was in full panic. I saw an older couple come up to the stairs. The woman picked up Nate, and the man asked me to come downstairs. I said I was on my way out, and thank you for a nice evening, but the older man said to sit down. They made Nathan sit down next to me, and they started yelling at Nate. How dare you have a fucking girl over? How dare you have sex with this little fucking whore? And how dare you be so indecent before your God? I was freaked the fuck out. I sat there until they stopped. I said I was his friend, and I had no intention of fucking him. Then Nate said, "You never liked Lindsay. It's your fault." I got up and grabbed my shit and raced the fuck out the door. Behind me, I heard them yelling things like, "Harlot, whore, gold digger." I never ever went back to motorcycle classes ever again out of fear of seeing Nick. I learned that day that there are many crazy fucking people in this world. I don't go to people's houses unless I know them very well. Well, yeah, obviously that's something that you learn early on in school. Don't go to fucking people's houses if you don't know them. That's also something that your parents should have taught you. This happened like 12 years ago. I was 14 and my sister was 12. It was during summer vacation, and we were hanging out, just the two of us outside, midday. We lived in a small town, where during weekdays, it was pretty empty because adults were at work. We'd been messing around, picking flowers and other random shit, when we decided to cut through a messy field of undeveloped land on the edge of our suburb. It was technically a shortcut to get home, but it wasn't the best idea because it was really bumpy. Potted land that other kids and teens left all sorts of shit laying around in. Well, our bad situation came around and bit us. We hadn't made it very far in the field when my sister got two bad things at once. Some sort of twisted metal, I don't know, maybe an old piece of tool or something, pierced right through her foam flip-flop and into her foot, and right after it happened, she shrieked, jerked, and twisted her ankle on an uneven ground. She started crying and hollering, and I was worried. The metal hadn't gone too deep. I was able to stop the bleeding with the hem of my shirt, but she couldn't walk anymore, obviously. Our parents were not available, didn't know where we were, and this was before I had a cell phone and shit. My sister was still on the ground crying, and I was trying to calm her down when something made me feel like looking up. It was the feeling of being watched. Out of the field across the road, standing on the corner in the distance, was some random dude watching us. He was too far away for me to see him clearly. All I could tell for sure was that he was blonde, probably an adult, dressed too warmly for July. He was all alone, just staring at us. I've always been a skittish horse, so I looked up at my sister and basically said, "Get on my fucking back. I will carry you home." We were leaving right now. Now, I had to carefully pick my way through this stupid fucking field in my own crappy-ass flip-flops, with my sister crying on my back. Luckily, she was tiny, but I was no linebacker either. It had rained a day ago, and the field had puddles of slimy water in the low spots. We were both kind of wet from her falling when she got hurt. I swiveled back to check if he was still watching us, and he was. Not only was he watching us, but he had crossed the road and entered the field. Now he was standing stock, still again, and just watching. Ice in the veins doesn't describe it. One of the scariest moments of my entire life up until that point. My sister looked when I looked, saw my face, and started crying even harder. I just shook her a bit on my back and whispered something like, "Stop it! I need to concentrate on getting us the fuck out of here. Watch him and tell me if he starts following us again. Just fucking be quiet." So that's when we did. I started walking again, as fast as I could without getting hurt. My sister watched him while I carried her. After less than a minute, she whispered to me that he was following us. How fast? Just walking. Is he fucking watching us? Yes. I told her to tell me if anything had changed, and keep going. I stomped through puddles I couldn't see into. I had no choice, hoping there was nothing sharp in them. I lost a flip-flop in the mud, and just kept going. We were about 3/4 of the way through the massive field when my sister whispered what I least wanted to hear. He was speeding up. I turned us right around, so we were facing him head on, and as loud as I could yell, I yelled something like, "Hey, we see you! Fuck off and leave us the fuck alone, or I will call the goddamn cops!" He said nothing. He just stopped again when I stopped, but gave no sign whatsoever he had heard me. Just nothing. I turned around again and kept going. My poor little sister was shaking like a leaf and just saying my name over and over and over. It was fucking awful, and there was nothing I could do but keep going. Eventually, he started following us again. At a slower pace, I finally made it into our suburb, out of the muddy field and onto solid concrete. I told my sister to hold on as tight as she could, and I fucking booked it. Started running with her on my back as fast as I could. We couldn't see him anymore. Didn't know if he was still doing whatever the fuck he was doing or where he was. And I was going to make it to our house or die trying. Every muscle hurt from carrying my sister so far. My bare feet were all scratched up and blistered from the road. But I didn't stop. I kept moving, and my sister looking out behind us. It felt like my heart was going to burst. The fear and suspense was awful. After what felt like forever, I made it to our house, ran across the yard, up to the driveway, and put down my sister, who started crying again. My hands were shaking so badly I could barely use my key. We made it in safely and called my mom. She had us lock every door and window and came rushing home, but nothing happened after that. He never found us. We never saw him again, and that's the end. I have no idea where he was, or why the fuck he was messing with us like that, but it gives me chills to this day. The way he had stopped when I stopped, and the way he ignored my yelling. I don't know what the fuck he wanted, or what the fuck he was doing, and I don't want to know. I'm a 19-year-old teen girl who's fairly tall in structure. This takes place a couple of months back, around October. I would say being extremely bored at college and my other friends hooking up left and right, I decided to jump on the Tinder bandwagon. Yeah, I know of the risks and all of that, but hey, I was bored and always made sure to inform my friends where I was at. When scrolling, I met this guy. Although I'm not the prettiest person in the world, I would definitely say I was lowering my standards with this particular pic. Large glasses, kind of fat, and was only a couple of inches taller than me. However, he seemed nice and said he was interested in pre-med. He seemed nice, liked to paint, and was only a couple of years older than me. Why not? So I scroll right on and move on. Well, the next day he messaged me several times and I responded back. The dude seemed interested, if not a little too interested. But hey, he wanted to get coffee in a public place, so I accepted. So we met for coffee. The dude is definitely a nerd, but I like that. I'm really studious myself, and really like to force hard on my academics. He buys me coffee and asks if I want to go back to his place. Red flag right there! But then this guy was not someone that screamed date rape, frat, or intimidating. We go back and we make out, and it gets a little heated. Granted, I made it clear I wanted a relationship, not a hookup, and wasn't willing to give him sex since I was and still am a virgin. Sure you are. Well, guess the guy was more experienced than I thought. Talked about his girlfriend and how he used to fuck her a lot and was very experienced. Gave the whole consent talk, which I thought was weird, but was cool with. I want to add that I didn't really enjoy the whole makeout, undressing part, and honestly was bored throughout the entire thing and was faking it the whole time. Then why the fuck did you go there? The guy just didn't do it for me. So I leave and I walk home. Well, he hits me up the next day and asks if we want to hang out again. I really don't want to, but my guy says it can be a study date. I try breaking it off, but he's persistent. Ew, sure. I ask my mom, wait, I thought you were in college. Why do you need your mom's permission? So she says go for it. Apparently the guy had a 4.0, so he must be smart. I had shit to do. No funny business. He said it was fine. He lied. The second I got to his apartment, he tried forcing me into having a drink like the first time we met. I'm underage and he knows it. No, you're just a square. I say no. He insists. I laugh it off and get some water. Then he gets weird. He tries getting me into his bed and begs for me to kiss him. Like persistent begging. I'm pretty sure that he wasn't. I'm trying to study and ignore him, and finally relent and give in. He set a timer for cuddle time. No one does that, and it was unpleasant. Then he tries to get me undressed. I tell him no. He begs and brings up how I undressed for him last time. I relent again, after telling him several times no, and clearly being uncomfortable. He makes me undress him, which I found repulsive, and drags me into the shower. Trigger warning ahead. We get in the shower together, and pressing his erect penis against my ass. I start to freak out due to being sexually assaulted in the ass by an older man as a freshman. He then forcibly sticks a hand into my crotch, and I yelp and smack his hand away. He apologizes, becomes passively annoyed, and we dry off, and we sit on his bed. This is when it gets worse. He makes a casual comment about how young he looks, and I inquire about it. Turns out that the man is 28 years old, which was 10 years older than me at the time. I thought he was 21. I won out. I'm shaking at this point, then becoming extremely serious. He asks me why I'm still a virgin and why I wouldn't have sex with him. I tell him I'm a Christian, and he laughs and says, "You already undressed for me. I don't think you're that much of a Christian already." Fuck him. I won out. Then the begging begins again, with him giving lewd comments about my body. Your body is so beautiful. Your titties are so pretty, etc. I'm almost in tears at this point when he again begs and forces me to give him a hand job. I do what he asks and hand him a tissue, disgusted when he comes over himself. This is when he gets really angry. He glared at me, tells me he has to take a phone call. This is my chance. I run over to the phone and text my guy friends to call me and bail me out. Luckily, my guy friend makes up an excuse, and I put him on speaker. I'm trembling at this point, and I can't stop. Seeing his mistake, the asswad begins to apologize profusely, and I grab my bag and sprint out of there. After hiding out at a Noodles and Company for an hour. What the fuck is Noodles and Company? I make it back to my dorm in tears, while my roommate promptly ignored me. Did I report him? No, of course you didn't. Turns out the guy's parents are filthy rich and related to powerful governmental leaders in China, which has nothing to do with whether you reported him or not. My parents didn't care and just thought I had regrets. I tried committing suicide right after and constantly felt dirty. Still not over it, even though I wasn't technically raped. I am going to warn you, the story is a bit long, and quite a doozy. Grab some popcorn and perk up those ears. This happened about 6 years ago. I'm 27 now. Having said that, I apologize if there are some details missing, or that I don't remember. I'd gotten out of a 3-year relationship that didn't end particularly well. I did not want to be one of those girls that made her way through a friend group, if you catch my drift. I wanted a change of scenery. I decided that I would try my luck on a dating site called Tinder. I know, terrible idea. I'm well aware of that now, but hindsight is always 20/20. In my mind, most of the dating sites are a cesspool of incels, catfish, and desperate people. To my surprise, I actually went on several decent sites. No red flags, creeper vibes, or weird feelings. Luckily, I made my mom aware of what I was doing, so whenever I'd go on a date, she'd know where I was and when I was going to be home. Mama didn't raise no idiot, right? Wrong. This is when I came across Dennis's profile. He seemed chill, kinda cute, and somewhat interesting, so I sent him a message. He was playful and had a sarcastic sense of humor, right up my alley. I decided to give him a shot. We meet at a coffee shop and had some very engaging and interesting conversations. Dennis was 5'9", normal build, balding with a reddish hair, and glasses. He definitely gave off some nerd vibes. He started off by asking, "What are you looking for?" I gave my normal response, "I'm wanting someone who is sweet and caring, but also funny and intelligent." Something along those lines. Nothing groundbreaking. Cut me some slack. I was young. I realized later that giving this sort of response was the beginning of the end. Dennis and I went on a couple of more dates that were unmemorable. I started to fall head over heels for this guy, and fast. He was sweet, understanding, caring, empathetic. He liked to work out and took care of himself. He was everything I ever wanted in a guy. It was difficult to understand why he was single, since I was falling for him so quickly. We agreed that we would be exclusive. Everything was going smoothly until about 2 months into our relationship. That's when shit started to hit the fan. For the last month, I had been pushing him to let me hang out at his place and to meet his roommate, from the suggestion of my parents, because they are smart people. Every time I'd push the subject, he'd always make up some excuse on why we can't. My roommate is crazy. It's not a good time for me. He works opposite schedules than me, etc. It was always something. At some point, we had made plans to go out to a club one evening. I was all dressed and ready to go, waiting on him. He ended up not answering his phone for a couple of hours. I realized his phone must have died, since whenever I would send him messages, it would never say delivered. For those of you who are Apple users, I ended up deciding to go to his place to see if he would answer his door. I obtained his address at some point. I don't remember how. He lived about 15 minutes away from me in an apartment complex, and it was the middle of winter, February. It was fucking cold. I knocked on his door, no answer. While heading back to my car, look who decided to show up. None other than Dennis himself. And guess who he was with? Yes, you are correct. Another fucking woman. Which I later found was his long-term girlfriend, Jessica. I quickly made my way over to him. The look on his face was fucking priceless. His face, deadpanned, as soon as he saw me. He whispered something to the girl he was with, and she made her way inside. He came over to me and was speechless at first. "I am very surprised to see you here." "Really? We had plans, remember? I wanted to see if you were home." "Yeah, I don't remember. My phone died, so I didn't receive any of your texts, and I lost track of time. We were at a friend's birthday party." "Who's the girl?" "Oh, she's my roommate. I thought the guy was your roommate." He was. She's my other roommate, and a very good friend." Mind you, I'm a very skeptical person, and alarm bells were definitely going off in my mind. In accordance with my parents' numerous warnings. However, Dennis is the sort of person who is very good at talking himself out of situations. His reasoning behind the decisions he makes, why he made them, etc. He was an excellent liar, and being the naive, insecure person I was, I believed him. We ended up going to the club after I waited for him outside in my car for almost an hour. I didn't think about it too much, since I was getting what I wanted and nothing was said about his girl roommate. Over the next month, I kept pushing Dennis to meet his family and his guy roommate. He eventually caved and brought me to see his mother. It was an extremely odd experience. We talked about books, and some of Dennis's friends and I made snide remarks about how Dennis's guy roommate was fucking nuts. Dennis's words. And they gave me the strangest glances. This would make more sense to me in about a month or so. Eventually I started to realize that Dennis's stories weren't adding up, and I started to see holes in his stories. He would only see me on Tuesday and Thursday evenings because he worked a lot of overtime. He would never be flexible or change his mind or even allow me to attempt to change his mind. If he was late coming to see me, which started to happen pretty frequently, he would send me screenshots of his work and his work vehicle and line waiting to get washed, or he would send me screenshots of his bathroom saying he just wanted to freshen up. When I would ask for a picture of him in that moment of him in his bathroom mirror, he declined. He refused to send any pictures of himself, proving that he was where he claimed to be. He would also take unusually long bathroom breaks at my house after sex. I saying like 20 or more minutes long breaks. I know, another huge alarm bell. Everything came to a head about a month or so later. I told Dennis that I wanted us to go somewhere with no phone service so that we could truly spend time together without technology being a distraction. He agreed. We ended up making plans to spend 2 to 3 days in Canada. It was still early in our relationship, 4 months, and my mom wanted to make sure I was safe, so she took down Dennis's driver's license and made a copy of it, as well as his license plate. Thank you, Mom. The trip ended up relatively uneventful until the last evening in the hotel room. I'm not sure if it was on purpose or if he was actually asleep. Dennis ended up rolling over to my side, pulling me in close and saying, "I love you, Jessica." That made my blood run cold. I was so upset. Tears started to blur my vision as I got up out of the bed. My parents were right all along. He was a liar and a cheat. Did I break it off? No, of course not. That would make sense. Why? I was naive and desperately in love with him. I also didn't want to admit it to myself that I had been played or that I was the side chick, so I acted as if nothing was wrong, and I didn't even hear what he said that night. Of course, it didn't get rid of the aching feeling that I had for several weeks. I began to have bad anxiety and panic attacks on my way to school because of the bad feeling in the pit of my stomach. Dennis was constantly lying to me, and I mean constant. It was so bad that I ended up starting to feel angry. I let that feeling simmer for a couple of days until I decided to do something about it. When realizing that you were right all along and things weren't just a strange coincidence, it's very bittersweet. On a freezing March day, after an exhausting day at school, I wanted to get rid of the nagging feeling in the back of my head once and for all. I decided to head for Dennis's apartment complex to see if he was still lying to me about living in the apartments with this girl roommate. I got out of my car. I was shaking. I didn't know it was from anxiety or from anger that was starting to bubble below the surface. Was he lying about this girl roommate? You bet your sweet ass he was. I knocked on his door and hid myself from view of the peephole. He answered the door with his girl roommate behind him. I came from around the corner to look at him with an emotionless face and said, "Wow." I turned on my heels and walked away, only to find out as I get back to my car that I locked myself out of my car on a cold March day in the middle of winter. I was so distracted by my rage and sadness that I didn't realize I left both my keys and my phone in my car. I'm such an idiot. I was beside myself. I didn't know what to do. I locked my phone in my car along with my keys. How the fuck can you do that? I was so angry at myself for being a fucking moron. Not only that, I was in the parking lot of my cheating ex-boyfriend's apartment complex. I wish I was making this up. I really do. With nothing else to lose, literally, I walked back to Dennis's apartment and knocked on their door. Jessica answers, and I beg to use their phone to call AAA. Jessica surprisingly agrees and let me use her phone. This entire time, Dennis is agitated and kept walking around after I got off the phone with AAA. At one point, he even went outside with a coat hanger in an attempt to unlock my door, but to no avail. During that time, I took advantage of me being alone with Jessica to get some information out of her, like how long they had been together, where did they meet. I felt as though I was an auctioneer. I was shooting 20 questions at her rapid fire before Dennis came back in. By the end of it, I had more than enough information to prove that Dennis was not who he says he was. Everything started to make sense, and puzzle pieces began connecting. One of the biggest aha moments for me was when we both were talking about being in a relationship with him on Facebook. It turns out this sly motherfucker created 2 different Facebook accounts to ensure he was in a relationship with us both, only to block the other girl on that account, guaranteeing that neither of us would come across each other or his other Facebook account. I remember in the beginning I commented on how his Facebook profile was super limited and didn't have anything on it. He claimed it was only because he used Facebook to befriend co-workers on it and didn't use it much. Anyway, near the end of our conversation, I tried convincing Jessica that Dennis was a pathological liar and didn't care about her. It was at this point I realized that Jessica could have been aware of everything that Dennis was doing and was in on it, or she was just that naive. I tried texting her after I had left their apartment to try and talk some more sense into her, but it was useless. Dennis was with her alone, and he was master at skewing and spinning stories. Unfortunately for him, I had no more trick up my sleeve. Over the course of the next week, I spent my remaining few free hours I had, if I wasn't studying or working, gathering evidence against Dennis. I did research on Dennis and Jessica through Google, but mostly Facebook. This is the scary part about Facebook. If you don't have your privacy settings on lock, I found out who Jessica's parents were and decided to send them a message through Facebook with all the evidence I have collected over the past week and a half against Dennis, ensuring that they would believe me and my story. And when I say evidence, I mean photos of him and I, screenshots of conversations we had through text, pictures of him and I, etc. All of these pictures, text, conversations having timestamps to show that he was seeing me at the same time he was seeing Jessica, hoping that they wouldn't write me off as some crazy ex-girlfriend or psycho bitch. Wishful thinking, am I right? I thought that there was something you should know. Your daughter is being lied to by her current boyfriend, Dennis. I met him on an online dating site, Tinder, and we spent the last 5 months together, but Dennis ended up lying to me about his life and everything about it. I doubt your daughter knows the extent to which she has been lied to. I feel it is only right for me to share this information I have collected with you, so that it might be brought to your daughter's attention, and so he can no longer get away with this type of behavior. Dennis is not who he says he is, or appears to be, and he has lied about many aspects of his life. Let me explain. As I stated previously, I met Dennis on Tinder, an online dating site. We dated for 5 months until I found out that he lied to me about his living conditions and the fact that he also has another girlfriend, your daughter. I have several pictures showing that Dennis and I were together as a couple. He also has several Facebook accounts. One he called a work Facebook, in which he was in a relationship with me, and another account in which he was in a relationship with your daughter. His work Facebook account no longer exists since he deleted it, but I was able to take pictures of it before it was deleted to prove what I am saying. Before continuing, I should mention that I have met your daughter twice. The first time was very brief, and Dennis told me that she was only a good friend. They had just gotten back from hanging out with some friends at Dave and Buster's house for his birthday party. This was back in early January. The second time meeting your daughter was for a longer period of time. This was at the beginning of March. I ended up going to Dennis's apartment to see if he was lying to me about still living at the apartment. He was. I ended up knocking on their door to find Dennis answer it and see your daughter standing behind him. Jessica mentioned to me about how she and Dennis have been dating for almost 4 years. I was also made aware of another Jessica he dated not too long before he started dating me. Jessica has also sent me text messages mentioning that there may be a possibility of him seeing another woman aside from your daughter and Jessica, a different Jessica. I will attach separate files with all of these photos I have collected. They will be in the order in which they are mentioned in this letter to you. I hope this information is of use to you, and I hope I was able to help in providing that Dennis is not who he says he is, and for you not to be fooled like I was. Thank you very much for your time. I did end up receiving a reply from her mother the following morning. The last time I heard from Dennis was a message he decided to leave in the grass in my backyard. It was a dead rabbit with its head cleanly cut from its body. It was clear that a human did it, since there were no sign of blood and the head was cleanly cut off. My family and I reported it to the police in case any escalation happened. Luckily, nothing did. Unfortunately, Dennis was smart enough not to take it any further, but it was clear he was very angry. He didn't want to leave any sort of trail through the internet or paper implying what he had did. Dennis, fuck you. Fuck your empty apology. I feel sorry that Jessica had to deal with your dumb ass as long as she did. You were only sad that you got caught. I hope karma plants you right on your ass. To all the ladies he has messed with, I hope you're okay, and that he hasn't dashed too much of your confidence. He's a lowlife, and that's all he'll ever be. Thank you for listening. Take care, friends, and be careful.